So, Heather, another week and really another month's worth of insanity. In fact, scratch that. Another week and another lifetime of insanity. I mean, frankly, it's. I have found this week that I go about 24 hours and it feels like a month has passed. And so there's a lot to talk about this week. Obviously, the big story, aside from the hearings for Pudser and the confirmation of Mnuchin, which in and of themselves would be big stories, were it not for the fact that 3 weeks into the Trump administration, they already have a massive scandal that has not just brewed, but exploded. Michael Flynn on Tuesday of this week, or I should say, I guess it was Monday night at almost midnight. And I laugh when I say that only because the White House claimed a lot of things over the course of the week, but they claimed that this has been in the works for weeks. It's a very odd time to drop it on a Monday night at 11 p.m. That your national security advisor is resigning or has been fired, depending on which person you're talking to in the White House. But in some ways, I mean, this was predictable. I mean, if anybody had to guess, Michael Flynn would probably be the first guy to go, right or no?
Oh, I don't know whether or not I would have predicted he'd be the first guy to go, but I certainly hoped he would be the first guy to go. I mean, this is an administration that is filled with more kooks than we've ever than ever. I mean, this is a unique situation in which we have a group of, we have a president who is obviously, something of an imbecile about anything to do with government, and is also in his own way extreme, who has surrounded himself with other extremists. Now, of that group, and I mean, there are some real winners in that group, Flynn was the one who was the scariest in many ways, because he was the head of the NSC, and that is the National Security Council is an extremely powerful group within any executive branch. I mean, apparently it's got like 600 people that works under them. It's not just some little group that meets in the afternoon in the Oval Office to talk about, the top secret briefing of the day. It's a very, very important agency. And Michael Flynn
and not subject to Senate confirmation.
Absolutely, which makes it sort of, it's kind of it's an unaccountable power center within the White House. And so this is not a person. The head of that group is generally considered to be someone who's supposed to be an honest broker, who brings the ideas coming from everywhere in the government, from all the defense, from the deep state surveillance, from CIA, from the political realm. All of it is supposed to filter through this group up to the National Security Advisor, who will then, lay out the range of possibilities for the president. Michael Flynn was an ideologue and an ill-informed, somebody who was literally kind of decompensating over the course of time. I mean, this was a man who originally had been in the Army. He rose to the very top of the Army as an intelligence officer, had been involved in all kinds of very important missions. And when he finally ascended to the top and went to the DIA, I guess, Defense Intelligence Agency, which is sort of the Pentagon CIA, and they put him in charge, it turned out that he was actually kind of losing it. And he was at that point, how long this had been going on, who knew? But in that job, it became evident that he was, not altogether there, that there was something wrong with him. And he ended up, running this very chaotic agency and was forced out by the head of the intelligence services of the Obama administration. And it turns out he was an Islamophobe. He was, tied into people like Alex Jones. He was believing conspiracy theories like Pizzagate. I mean, he went to the Republican National Convention and led the chant for lock her up and said that if this happened, I'd be run out of town. I mean, the guy was clearly, the clinical term is nuts. And so, to me, he was the scariest of all the appointees in the national security realm by Donald Trump. So I'm glad he's gone. And the connections with Russia, that whole story has been, roiling underneath the surface for many, many months. And Flynn was always right in the middle of it. So I am not surprised that it finally came to this. This was a very serious, very, very serious issue because, let's not forget what he was, this whole business about how, he lied, like the Trump administration cares about
right.
lying. But, he lied and we couldn't abide the lying. That was ridiculous. The real underlying issue here is that he, and it's possible at the behest of Trump, probable in my view, needed to reassure the Russians that the sanctions that were imposed on them for interfering in the election on Donald Trump's behalf, that they would be, quote, revisited, in other words, lifted once Trump came into office. That's what was really happening with this whole thing, and that is what's starting to bubble to the surface.
All right. Well, let's recount this. I mean, we have we have a couple minutes left here. What we know and the firing / resignation, which I guess became unsustainable. I think Kellyanne Conway this week said something to the fact like, the fact that he lied to Mike Pence, and we should say this is the story, right? Mm-hmm. That he lied to Mike Pence about the nature of his contact with the Russian ambassador the day after the sanctions were imposed. This is, of course, before Donald Trump assumed the presidency, when Barack Obama was still president. The fact that he lied to Mike Pence became unsustainable. And which is a very strange turn of phrase. It sort of I guess one could. It sounded as if it was something like that Flynn had committed adultery, and it took 6 or 7 months before Donald Trump really realized that he couldn't cope with the infidelity. But what it really was that it was reported. There was enough reporting that came out that the White House knew that knew what Flynn was up to, and so Pence must have known, according to if we believe the White House story, must have known that he was lied to. They must have known about it for at least several weeks, and it was only when the public became aware of this discrepancy in their story that fact became unsustainable. And I would say the one thing that really sort of puts a fine point on it, and we'll talk about this timeline when we come back from the break, but the thing that put the point on it was the first thing that Donald Trump tweeted after Michael Flynn resigned was the next morning, and it was about all these leaks. It was all the leaks.
Right.
It is that the public became aware that their story was a fiction and forced Donald Trump's hand. That is what he lamented. It's something to lament. There's some concern there that we have a government that seems to be at war with itself. In leaks in general, I don't have a problem with, but there definitely is an element to this where we are seeing the deep state react to a presidency that does not seem to be aligned with its public statements and with the rest of our government.